and they made a pact, a secret actually, and they were going to turn me into a good Christian girl and bring me back to God so that I would leave sex work behind.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of On the Horizon, a podcast about what's on the horizon for sex workers and how to navigate it. I'm Jessie Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual and at jessiesage.com.
And I am MelRose Michaels, and you can find me at MelRose Michaels on social and at melrosemichaels.com.
Also, just as a reminder, if you're joining the podcast on Apple, please leave us a 5-star rating and review us. It really helps us grow as a podcast and better share information from our guests to the sex work community as a whole.
Absolutely. And last but not least, if you want to support the podcast, please go to anchor.fm/horizon, spelled WHORIZON, to become a premium subscriber on the podcast, which unlocks you 2 bonus episodes each month on the 8th and 22nd between our regularly scheduled episodes. And we'll give you access to tons of exclusive footage of ourselves and our guests.
Yes, please subscribe.
Who misses free and affordable ads and social networks without the anti-sex work rhetoric?
SWr is a team of sex workers and technologists from Melbourne, Australia, aiming to bring back free and fair advertising and social spaces to the sex work community.
They also give back to organizations based in harm reduction, sex work, and education.
Stepping away from the clunky design of traditional platforms, their 2 products, tris.link and SWr.at, are refreshing and well-needed changes in both presentation and mission.
Both are free to join and open to all. In the words of an A4 user, from the policies to the language to the advice and tips, it makes such a big difference to feel encouraged and supported instead of policed.
Check out their website, assembly4.com, for the word, not the number, for more info.
Hi, we are doing a compilation episode between 3 podcasts. I'm Jessie Sage from the Peepshow podcast and On the Horizon.
I am MelRose Michaels from On the Horizon and also from SexWorkCEO.
And I am Caitlin Bailey with the Oldest Profession podcast.
Yeah, so last year, Caitlin and I collaborated and did a crossover episode from Peepshow podcast and the Oldest Horizon.
I mean, you're not wrong, you know.
The Old Pro podcast. And what we did is we collected coming out stories, coming out as a sex worker stories, and put them on both podcasts. And this year we're doing that. We're thruppling it. We're doing it with On the Horizon too.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, I think it's so important this time of year to come together to acknowledge, the December 17th holiday, the International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. And, we acknowledge the folks that we lost this year to stigma and violence. And I think it's just really important to take the time to remind our listeners that no matter where they're at in their journey, they're not alone. None of us are alone.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we all said when we were planning this is that, it is not safe for everyone to come out. Not everybody has happy coming out stories. Some people really are supported. Some people aren't.
Mm-hmm.
When we asked people to submit their stories, we wanted them to submit them from where they are, from how they are, from how it went. And so we have a collection of stories from listeners of all of the podcasts who just submitted their coming out stories. And we're going to play them in no particular order.
Yeah. And it's really timely because a lot of sex workers and alike are going home for the holidays. They're going to face family. And, whether they're out or not out, I think having this message ahead of that will really resonate and help us through this family time we're all looking forward to. All right. Should we get into it?
Okay. So in no particular order, we are going to start with Plush Piper.
This is a submission from Plush Piper. So just a little bit of background info. My mom is disabled and I live at home to help her out. I finally told her I found a job on Craigslist that paid cash as a parking lot attendant. LOL. Yes, this person that sits there all night alone collecting cash when people leave the parking lot, as if that even exists anymore. I've literally only seen recent lots with machines that accept cash or card. So in no time at all, I started coming home with a lot of cash. Obviously, way more than a parking attendant would make. Mind you, This was also me just starting out in this career, so I had no idea what I was doing. But I wanted to try and keep track, so I would log my appointments in this little black teeny tiny notebook. I know, as if a teeny tiny black book isn't suspect enough before knowing its contents. Also, I worked with an agency, and I didn't plan on doing it for long, just to get out of debt, so most of my shoddy record keeping was just to make sure my new boss wasn't getting one over on me, and that's besides the point. Anyway, so as far as home life went, I didn't really hide my job per se, but I definitely was not open about it either. I guess keeping cash in your little black book drawer is just asking for an explanation. So one afternoon, I'm headed off to work and my mom decides to stop and ask me about it, which I'm not going to lie, I knew it was eventually going to happen. The convo went like this. Mom, hey Piper, do you really work in a parking deck? Me. Yeah, that's random to ask, but yes, I work in a parking deck. Mom, you can tell me if you don't, right? Me. Okay, I don't. Mom, do you actually go on dates and stuff? Me. Yeah, but I work with an agency that's been around for a while. So they screen the people I see. Don't worry, Mom, I'm safe. Mom. Okay. Well, as long as you're safe, you don't have to worry. I love you. Kiss. Me. Kiss. That went way better than I was expecting. Mom, I've known for a little bit. It doesn't take much to put two and two together, but obviously, if push comes to shove, we have to do what we have to do. I can't judge you or treat you any differently for trying to keep us above water. Me, thank you, Mama. I'm really trying. Ever since, my mom's been nothing but supportive and understanding. As far as the rest of family, though, we still tell them I work in a parking deck. But to make it a little bit more believable due to COVID and avoiding cash transactions and such, the boss has put in machines and has transferred me into her construction business that I do office work at. And nobody really asks any more questions beyond that.
Amazing.
Go mom. It's always nice to have a co-conspirator mom,
Yeah.
That's I love that too, that like we're all helpless, I think. Well, not all of us. I don't want to speak for everyone, but like a psychologist once told me when I was like, why do I act this way around my parents? It's like we are all defenseless against the people that raised us. And so I love that, like, no pushback whatsoever of like, do you really work in a parking lot? Like, sure, mom, random question. Why do you ask? But do you really though? No.
The funny thing about that is like, I was listening to that and I was thinking as a mom, as a sex working mom, one time I go to Costco and you can't go into Costco without leaving with like $350 worth of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I'm with my teenager who knows I'm a sex worker, but not that much about it. And I'm walking through. Now I have $300 worth, $400 worth of stuff. I take out 4 $100 bills, give it to the things, and he's like, "Mom, where'd you get all that cash?" And I was like, "I sold stuff on Craigslist."
Really? That's so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I was like, "That's almost true. It's
That's almost true. That's nice."
And she tells us about Craigslist. I'm like, "Yeah, you get a job on Craigslist.
Yeah.
Like that's almost true."
Yeah.
It used to be more true before Sesta Fosta, but then,
Yeah.
Anyways,
How it goes.
It's very funny. Like the lies that sex workers get pushed into telling are often
Yeah. Yes. Not elaborate. It's hard to, it's comforting to hear the support because I know that's not a lot of my coworkers and colleagues' stories. So like that really is just comforting to hear. Like that's happening.
But there are moms who will respond like that
and understand.
Yeah, it's also nice too to have, someone helping you navigate the family dynamics. And I have no doubt in my mind that like, continuing to tell the rest of the family details about your fake boring job is, that's real. That's a survival strategy. And it's nice to have backup on that. And it's I shout out to this listener for figuring out how to navigate that difficult conversation. Many blessings to, how well their mom took it. And I can totally see why not letting the rest of the family in makes sense for now.
Yeah. I also
absolutely.
think it's amazing, like, that this is a COVID story too. Like,
Mhm.
oh, well, there aren't parking attendants anymore.
Yes.
So let's see.
Yeah, you have to evolve it to fit the narrative. That's very
What's something no one wants to talk about? Construction? Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I hope that you don't get that just like one extra uncle that's like, oh, cool. I just read, like, I want to talk about trucks or like whatever. Yeah. You don't want to get mansplained to about your fake job. That's always a
Right.
danger.
And I
Like,
mean, we can't all be accountants, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Let's go on to Treasure.
Hey guys, my stage name is Treasure the Stallion. I go by Treasure for short, but my real name is Tiffany. So I definitely am really excited about this, to get the word out, share my story on sex work. And I'm just really excited about this whole new journey that has come about for me through this process as a sex worker. So I wanted to share my story on how I got introduced to it, what led me onto the path, my experience, journey through it, and how it inspired me to actually write my first book ever. So let's just start. Formally and first most, I did not start off as an escort or sex worker at all. I was a student athlete. I lived on the East Coast in Miami. I went to school out there. I did track and field. I was very good. I got my degree. I studied psychology, pursued my master's in mental health therapy. For the longest time, I thought I'd be a clinical worker. And even I was training for the Olympics. So I also had dreams to take my athletic skills and abilities to the next level. So this was 2020 now, early 2020, I have received my Olympic trial games invitation. So at the time, it was such a struggle financially, just having to take care of my personal expenses, and then the expenses of track and field. I mean, I had from actually having to pay for equipment, coaching, rehab, nutrition, to pay to use the facilities, transportation when you're traveling on the road, actual fees to enter and join competition, food expenses on the road, hotels, travels, things like that. So I was really supporting myself. I wasn't, I didn't have a gang of people around me. And so it was already tough. So at the time I was just doing personal training, just doing some sports massage, just trying to make extra money to make it by. And then COVID happened, and COVID really was like the turnaround for everyone. So, that was really, and even leading up to COVID, I remember feeling super, super stressed because it was like pinching pennies and it was so hard, and I hated living that way. I was like, if this is something that I want to do, why do I have to be so broke? Like, I hated that. So then COVID happened, and it, financially, it just threw everything off. When they started closing down facilities and things like that, it was hard for me to do any type of training and stuff. So I had to really reset or think about what my next move was. I felt like my back was against the wall. And I had always, at the time, I always wanted to go to the West Coast. I would just really pray, think hard. What should I do? Because I don't know. I felt called to go to move to the West Coast, because at this time I was on the East Coast. Felt called to move to the West Coast, and I was just, okay, let me go to Cali. I've always wanted to go to Cali, so I moved to Cali. And then out Cali, I saw how hard it was still to get a job. Even though I'm qualified, I have education, it was really hard to find a job. And so now I'm going through social services just to get stamps so I can eat, get some healthcare, get some cash so I can just not have to go broke. And I'm just really thinking what am I going to do? I need to get a place to stay. I had to just find a home, a shelter home to stay in. So it was really tough. It definitely was a predicament. That was not ideal. And then I started looking into escorting. Now at the time, I didn't really know much about it. I didn't know how many girls were actually involved in this industry and in this world until I really got into it, and I realized wow, a lot of girls changed their lives through this industry. A lot of girls make good money for themselves, and they turn it all around. I was very nervous. I was very closed-minded to the idea. I absolutely just said no. I didn't go to school and get an education just to be a hoe. Those are things that I told myself. I was like, there's no way that I'd be accepted by God if I turn over and do this. Like, this is not me. And then at the same time, I'm broke. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I just did my research, and I'm like, fine, well, it took some time into me, really, I had to really think about it. Then I was like, okay, well, how can I do it legally? Like, if I do it, so I always felt like, okay, well, I give really good massages. I can go in with that. And then, I could probably be successful just with that. So I looked into brothel houses in the state of Nevada, because that's where it is legal. And, it's safe. I felt like it was safe. You have security. You don't have to worry about any of the headaches or the stress that come with not working in a safe environment like that. So I feel like it was like a good way to just get in an industry that I was very, very, very new at. I just wrote some notes just to kind of keep me on topic. So then that was my decision. I made some calls. I did an interview. At the time, COVID was still, rampant or whatever. So I was able to get hired as an escort. And so at the time I was just doing massages, because we weren't really allowed to, we were only allowed to use our escorting license. So for me, it was perfect. Usually customers would come in for companionship. They wanted body rubs, massages, things like that, cuddling. So for me, I had the massage gig going all the way. And then eventually, when COVID lifted in the brothel houses, they were able to not only, use their escort license, but their prostitution license as well. So we were able to go full all the way, which was very hard for me and tricky, because I wasn't used to dealing with men in that degree. Because in my personal life, I'm very shy, reserved. I don't really date much. I'm very to myself, just always focus on me and growing and things like that. So that was definitely a culture shock. That was a change. I was able to meet a lot of women in the industry in that house who really helped me. There was actually a girl who took me under her wing, and she was just teaching me everything from protocol, the system, how it works, how you make your money, how you negotiate money, how you price things, how you sell your parties. That's what they call it. Like when you book sessions with clients, they call it parties. So how you sell and, make the biggest bang or whatever for your buck. So I had to learn all of these things. I was also tomboyish, because of being an athlete. I always wore sneakers and t-shirts and sweats. So I had to learn how to find out different lingeries and stuff that fit me, my body. So I was just discovering all different types of stuff, wearing different makeup, lace, negligees. I was discovering this whole new world of feminine power, energy, sex appeal, how to use own yourself and your value and put a price tag on that, and there's nothing wrong with it. So that was very empowering. Through the whole time, there was a lot of pros and cons. For me personally, it was very, very tough. And I would write about my experiences. From the first day I started, I just would write about everything that I was going through. And I lasted for 7 months. I did, I think about when I got 4 months into it was when it snapped to me, I should write a book. At the time I had a friend who was pushing me, you really need to write a book. You've always been saying you want to do it. This is the perfect opportunity. You have the space, you have the time. So I was like, all right, fine. I reached out, found the writing coach, and I was like, okay, I really want to take this serious. So by the time I had reached out to a writing coach, I had my manuscript raw already written out. And when I handed it over, she had told me this is 2 books right now. You literally have enough for 2 books. If you want to just focus, we can condense it and focus on the sex work industry part. And then, we can focus on the second book after. So then that's when it inspired me. I just started going all the way through with writing the book, and it's called The Birth of Treasure, Navigating the Sex World. And I literally talk about my experience from beginning to the end of what it was like, how I went through so much challenges, how I overcame them, how I was able to find myself. I was able to discover a purpose of myself. Being a writer and an author really changed my life. I bossed up as a woman. You know, I had so much growth, not as a person, but also as a woman as well. It really just changed my whole paradigm and perspective on life and just things like that. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. I probably wouldn't want to go back and do it again because of everything I've had to go through. However, I am glad that I experienced it. I'm glad that I really toughed it, I toughed the whole thing through, and it's made me stronger today. And it's given me the opportunity to even submit this clip into you guys for this potential opportunity. So I'm very excited. I'll also be sending a copy of my book. So I look forward to talking to you guys and moving further. So I'll see you guys soon.
That's awesome.
Yeah. She's looking at the camera so much that
I feel like I'm in
she
an
was
interview.
there. I was like,
yeah. I was like,
you're
not
there.
yeah. Yeah. Direct eye contact.
I think that's such a powerful testimony, right? Like coming
really
from
is.
an athlete, right? And we all bring the tools and the background and the skills that we collected before entering this work into it, right? And we take what we learn in this work back out, right? To it's such a back and forth. And so I really, really connected to their description of what it means to be an aspiring Olympic athlete, right? And the self-direction of that, right? And what is asked of not just your body, right? But the logistics and, what doing that without support means, and having to pay your own way and pay your own dues and pay, and
I actually
trying
didn't know that until I listened to her. I don't know how that works. I was like, wait, she has to pay for all of that?
I think Olympians are the most underpaid athletes of all time. They everything they do is on them. And then when you win in the Olympics, you really don't even get any money. You just get
unless you get a deal, right, to sell
a brand deal,
which doesn't happen for everyone. It's a sort of a select few. And so the passion and the drive, right, of but the fuel behind that, and then just sort of hit this wall of COVID, right, and hit this wall of she got her degree. She's an incredibly accomplished athlete. And then this big question, right? Why do I have to be so broke all the time? I think we're sold this lie of meritocracy, right? That with effort, right, with achievement comes a kind of financial stability. And that's just not the world that we live in right now. And so, I really, really appreciated all of the forethought, right? Of how can I keep myself safe, right? What are the boundaries within which I might be willing to do this, right? At no point does she abandon herself, right? At no point does she sacrifice, and then of course the big coming out, right? Of writing a book about your experiences, right? Journaling throughout, keeping hold. I don't know, there's so much to celebrate here.
Yeah. I was thinking one of the things to celebrate is the way in which other sex workers help each other out, and that's been my experience too, is that I also learned the ropes from other sex workers. I learned how to negotiate my business. I learned how to talk to clients. I learned that through relationships with other sex workers. And I feel that's such a big deal. And going back to what you were saying at the very beginning, one of the things that we could take from listening to people's stories is to think about the fact that we are all part of this larger community. And we see that in little interactions with our peers. And we also can see that in in these stories.
Absolutely. And the coming out of the book reveal, that's big to me, but then that stood out to me as well, is that she had this community. It made me teary-eyed because that was not my experience, but mine was self-inflicted. I just was in my narrow little lane and I wasn't reaching out for help. I didn't get involved in the community. I was just I just got to figure this out. So having so many people swoop in and show her the ropes, show them the ropes, that's amazing.
Yeah. And that is something positive to say about sort of communal working space, right? And it's so important for these online communities and these physical and these regional communities to stay together. Many blessings to older old pros. That absolutely was my experience. I dipped my toe in the early 2000s on a message board and was almost immediately messaged by other old pros in the area that were so I see that you're new. Do you want to have lunch or coffee? We have stuff to talk about probably. So
that's so great.
Great. Yeah. Really, really great. Yeah.
Okay, we are going to move on to sultry Miss M.
Ooh.
My coming out story is actually still quite recent. I woke up one morning to an email from my father asking who else in the family knew I was sultry Miss M. This came as quite a shock since it was about 1 week before my 7-year anniversary of working very hard to not have my parents or family find out until I was ready to tell them. Turns out he saw me on the campsite that I worked on because he was a client occasionally. I was terrified by his email. I went for a walk around the neighborhood, came back, wrote him a huge long email explaining what I do, what I like about it, why I didn't tell him. And he had all of the right responses. He was proud of me, and he was happy I was successful, and he was happy that I had found a career that I was good at and that worked for me. He always knew that I never really fit into the boxes of society, and so when he took a peek at my website and realized that this was a full-on business and a full-on career, he was really proud of the fact that I was doing what I loved and that it worked out well. I can't imagine a response having gone any better than that. And it definitely made me feel a little silly for having not told him for so long. But we never know how people are going to react. And so having that positive response was really quite wonderful.
Oh, that was beautiful. I'm like teary-eyed.
Yeah.
I was also found, and it did not go out well. Like, not at all. And that's why it's like amazing to me. My, not my dad, but my husband's uncle found a video of me and then went down a rabbit hole and pulled
wow.
like every link that he could find and started sending it to all of the family members. And it was not at all good. And the funniest part about this story, the only funny thing about this story is that they don't actually know like how the internet works, and we're like, and tried to lie, and because obviously like the only way you find porn is by watching porn, right? And
Right.
they were
Yep.
and was like, I saw Jessie giving a blowjob on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, what groups are you a part of? That is not, cool.
That is not what happens on Facebook. And
amazing.
PJ's dad was like, he was a little bit less like upset about it, but was like, the family's giving me a hard time. So can you keep that off of Facebook? And PJ's like, it's not on Facebook. That's not a thing.
Wow. And I think that speaks so much of like when you do get violent pushback, right? When you do have people that go on these shame campaigns, right? It's about their own shit, right? Like your husband's uncle is obviously uncomfortable, right? With his appetite for erotic content. Exactly. Yeah. And so he's trying to project that on you. And so like, coming back to, our listener that sent this incredible story, and it's like, that is such high marks for her dad, right? And his comfort in his own skin, right? To be able to engage with her and ask the right questions and like to get to a place of being proud of his daughter and recognizing all of the entrepreneurism and the creativity and the, willingness to survive. And, that's, I just wanted to throw that out there and be like, Jessie, your husband's uncle is obviously about his own shit. And I think that like sort of in retrospect means like, kudos to cool dads,
Yeah. Because what you saw in Miss M's story is that her dad wasn't embarrassed about his own.
Yep.
He wasn't embarrassed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like he was
like, I came to this looking for not my daughter, and here you are, and that's cool. And I have a lot of follow-up questions. Happy to engage, and you're absolutely right that can go a lot of different ways, and people are really willing to double down, right, in their own shame, right? People are really willing to go for a scorched earth tactic to prove their own pre-existing prejudices correct. And so like the Miss M was very lucky. I feel very lucky to have a dad who's really proud of me. And there are a lot of folks that don't have that capacity, that haven't gotten over their own shit enough, right? To be able to see the gifts that the people that they love bring into their life, regardless of whether or not they do or ever have engaged in sex work.
Yeah, regardless of career. I actually was outed to my aunt by another sex worker, though. So that felt very different because they were on a double date with a friend, and the friend brought a new woman into the fold for dinner. And she was saying she webcams and does X, Y, and Z. And my aunt was like, "Oh, my niece is a model." And then she showed her a picture of me, and she's like, "Oh no, that's my former name, Chastity Merlot. She's a webcam model, and she was really I was popular at that time." She's like, "I know her." And my aunt's just like, "No, she's not." And she's like, "Yeah, she is. Look," and showed it to my aunt. And then my aunt texted me, and she was like, "Chastity." I was like,
not cool.
Yeah,
sex worker and sex worker, not
I know.
cool.
I was so taken back by that, but my aunt was very gracious and loving, and she was just like, "Why did you tell me? I'm here for it, whatever." But it was just like, I did not expect it to come from that side of the team. Like,
you would think that she would know that's you don't out other sex workers, never out other sex workers.
Note to listeners that are not in sex work or in sex work.
You expect that from like clumsy clients, and I've experienced it a little bit too. I think that, like, you know, when you do start coming out to your peer group or your friends, you can get, like, I call it like my extra woke friends, right? That like really want to prove how cool they are with my sex work by talking about it all the time, and it's like not helpful.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, or they're like, it's very tokenizing, cool. Like, this is my sex worker friend. Look how cool I am. And I'm like, I'm actually not cool. I'm like a mom that lives in the suburbs. Like, how am I helping your woke friend?
Yeah, right. It comes down, right? Like, intent and impact are separate things.
Yes, exactly.
Like, you see the intention of like, I'm cool. I want to be cool. I want, like, you know, I want my cookie for being such a cool person. It's like, well, there's so much context you don't have here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It's like that. Like, it's like the people who are like, I'm not racist, I have a black friend. You know, it feels like that. Like, here's this one person and they're okay. So therefore.
I'm sure they really appreciate being described that way. That's super cool. Yeah. Everyone loves that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sasha Ray contributed a video.
Hi everyone, my name is Sasha Ray, also known as XO Sasha Ray, and I have been in the industry for about 10 years now, so you can think of me as a little bit of a vet. And when I was asked to talk about my coming out story as a sex worker, it kind of threw me for a loop, because it really made me realize that throughout my tenure in this industry that I never really came out in the way that you think of coming out when you hear the phrase coming out. And it was a little weird, I'm not gonna lie, because usually when I come out to people, it's because they come across my social media platforms and they get curious or they get nosy and they just want to know exactly what it is that I'm doing, since they see me in a completely different way than how they know me. And I'm not shy about what I do. If you ask me about it, I'm going to tell you the truth, that yes, I am a live streamer. I'm a content creator. I have my own podcast and art business, and I'm a personal assistant, and it all is within the adult industry and beyond into mainstream. But when I think about a moment in my career that really made me want to tell someone, me come out of my way to tell someone about what it is that I do, it was a little difficult. There's maybe only 3 people in my life that I actually came towards and said, hey, this is what I do for a living, without it being an accidental surprise and them finding out, or without them being there with me from the very beginning of the journey and to where I am now. And one of the times that I came out was when I was 19. So I was very, 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 very fresh in the industry. And the guy I was dating, I was very toxic at that time. And let's just say I was a very young girl. And if anyone knows anything about Facebook 10 years ago, it's basically like how our Instagram and Twitter is for us as sex workers today, where if we lost that account, we lost a lot of money. Like, we're leaving money on the table type of situation. And that's how Facebook was back then. And I decided to take the guy that I was dating, his Facebook account information, and I locked him out of it. I changed the email, I changed the password, and I basically was like, nah, bro, I'm not giving you your account back. So he decided to dox me, basically, and he posted all my links on Facebook, pictures of me on Facebook, and in that moment, I knew I was kind of screwed because my mom followed both of us, me and him. And at the time all of this was going on, I remember very clearly because I had the little red Sprint, like Palm Pilot phone, and my notifications were going off like crazy. And my mom was upstairs at one of our neighbors' houses just chilling, and I knew I needed to tell my mom before she saw this on Facebook. And I remember I thought I was Usain Bolt, and I sprinted so far and so fast across the other side of the building and up those stairs, and I barged inside the door, and I'm sobbing with tears, and I'm like having an anxiety attack, and I'm saying, hey mom, listen, I need you to know something. I do more than just go-go dancing. I am a webcam model. This is what I do. I get naked on the internet, and I make money off of it. And she comforted me in that moment. She told me everything was going to be okay. She didn't judge me. And the reason why she didn't judge me too was because she had a past of her own, and she was very accepting at that time and in that moment. And she gave me a lot of love, and she gave me a lot of comfort. And she really made me feel like it was okay with what I was doing, even though society might have made me feel like what I was doing was wrong. But she gave me that kind of that notion of, you're grown, like it's okay. You do what makes you happy as long as you're safe and you're happy. And that made me feel really good, because I know I'm very privileged, because there's a lot of us in this industry where our parents do turn their backs on us when they find out what it is that we do. And I'm just very grateful that my mom did not do that to me, and that she did not exile me from her life. And then there's one more story I want to talk about, because this one was kind of like, it was more of like a coming out. Like, I made the decision to sit there and say, hey, this is what I do for a living. And it was to my two older sisters. These women are amazing. They are beautiful, independent, great mothers. Like, they are just so wonderful. And I learned a lot from both of them together and individually. And they've known me since I was an 18, 19-year-old child, and to watch me blossom into the almost 30-year-old woman that I'm about to be. And it was last year, Thanksgiving, a pandemic Thanksgiving, so everyone was just excited to be able to finally come back together and just be in the presence of the energy that we all were longing throughout that year. And we were all drunk, as our family typically is. And we had always talked about OnlyFans, because OnlyFans was big. Everyone was an OnlyFans model. Everyone was talking about OnlyFans. Everyone wanted to be in OnlyFans. Like, that's where the money was. And so we always talked about it, joked about it. And they said they wanted to do it. I joked about, yeah, I'd be down to do it, knowing damn well I've already had one. And I remember I just pulled them into the kitchen and I said, hey, there's something I need to tell you, and something that I've been wanting to tell you guys for a while. And I showed them my Twitter. I then showed them all my links, and they were not judgmental at all. Like, all the fears and worries that I had, that I thought I was going to get from them, was just all in my mind from my personal experience. And they were just so happy that I was making money. Like, they knew what I was. I think they have always had an idea of what it was that I was doing, but they knew I was grown. And you know, if I'm grown people do grown shit or stuff. And I don't know if I can cuss here. And they literally were like, yeah, I'm more down to want to go ahead and get an OnlyFans because I see what you're making. And I thought about wanting to, like, you know, get into the industry too and like be a no face model. And like we just started talking about a whole part of my identity, and I don't feel judged by them anymore. And when I tell them I'm going out of town, I don't have to make up a reason or make up a friend that I'm seeing. I can say, yeah, I'm going on a work trip now, and they're completely acceptable and happy about it. And I just want to say that I know that coming out stories are going to be different for everyone. I know that I am actually very privileged to even have the people that are closest and mean the most to me in my life be acceptable of what it is that I do for a living, because I know that is not the case for everyone. And I just want anyone that feels alone or feels like they are living a Hannah Montana life, or if they just want to scream and tell someone about what it is that they do for a living just to feel like they're not trapped within themselves, you can always reach out to me. Of course, I'll keep everything anonymous. And, you know, I can just be that ear or be that person that you need to kind of feel free within yourself, where, you know, someone is knowing what it is that you're doing. And I especially want to speak out and talk to my Black and people of color, because I know we are taught to grow up to suffer in silence. We are taught to sit there and work through everything on our own and not to complain about it and not to, like, you know, fuss about anything. But I want you guys to know especially that we have each other and that we are here for one another. And if you need a safe space to go to, I am always here for you, no matter what. And I want you to know that being unapologetically yourself and speaking your existence and just being true to your core will always make you feel better, will always set you free, and will always bring light and positivity into your soul. And I know that sometimes the resolution is not always going to be happy or is not always going to be a positive one. But just know when you are yourself, you will attract people that love your energy and love your soul. And I'm going to leave everyone there on that notion there. Once again, I am SWr, and that is my coming out story.
Bless Sasha
How
Ray.
powerful.
I
Yeah.
have chills right now.
I know.
Oh my
I feel like I
God.
went to a
Yeah.
TED
Oh,
Talk. Teary-eyed and
yeah. So many feelings. All of the
Yeah.
feelings. Yeah. And like, it's just, yeah, Sasha Ray nailed it. It is so important to have a supportive community.
Mhm.
And before we dig into it, I just want to say what fucking bullshit it is that we live in a society where it is more shameful to take your clothes off and make erotic content that makes people happy on the internet than it is to dox someone that you supposedly love and put them in active danger and fuck that guy and fuck
Mhm.
those guys. And
Mhm.
like, so many blessings to Sasha Ray and the incredible women that she is lucky enough to be in a family with. That's, you know,
Yeah.
badass mom, great sisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that she brought up that I think that we don't talk about very much, especially because there's so much taboo about like kids and motherhood and all kinds of stuff, is she's a second generation, at least. Like she,
Yeah.
you know, and she doesn't talk that much about her mom, but there are so many sex workers for whom like their mothers have been in sex work, their sisters have been in sex work, like the, you know, and having that sort of, you know, we interviewed somebody for our podcast who identified as a second generation sex worker.
Yeah, that was
and
really interesting.
yeah, and
More common than you think, you know?
yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that's so sweet that like the way that her mom like responded to that is like, hey, you have to do what you have to do. I did stuff that I had to do too, and I'll support you.
All love. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that she spoke to marginalized communities as well, because that we need that. We need everyone to know that they have a safe space within the sex work community and someone to talk to. And I love that she left the door open for people to reach out to her too.
Yeah, even if you weren't born into a supportive community, you can make one. Yeah, absolutely. I had a similar experience, with my mom when I came to her and I told her I was pregnant and I wanted an abortion, and she was just really, really there for me. And like, I felt like I got this window into family history, right? It's like my mom and all of her sisters and like, my grandmothers and the choices that, they had or didn't have, or the hoops that they had to go through. My mom's two older sisters had to get abortions before 1973. And then, my mom and her older sister were able to get some of the first, legal abortions in the country. And so I think it's, there's a generational aspect to, I think, all of the work that we do and all of our stories. And I really couldn't have said it better than what Sasha Ray said, of like, when you're willing to embrace yourself and your own truth, what you attract to you and what you reveal and light up in the world. We shouldn't carry these shameful secrets, right? We can reject the stigma. We can tell and claim and reclaim our stories.
Yeah, I always find that working in sex work is, it almost acts as like you get this really cool filter on the world where like you can filter out the people that you don't even want around you, where you're like, oh, you don't agree with the sex work, you don't agree with abortion, like, okay, next, okay, next, okay, next. And then your circle is just filled with people that are going to love and build community for you and be supportive. And that's almost, it's like this unspoken benefit or like byproduct of sex work, is when you're out and when you're in a safe enough environment to do that, you kind of get to, that is how you attract, because you're filtering people out left and right.
Yeah. I mean, the circle gets smaller.
It
for
does.
Sure.
It does.
But
safer.
But safer.
Yeah,
but safer. I think that's the best way to say it. Okay, let's move on to our next person.
Sorry, just before we move on, I just wanted to say, like, these have been so good. Like, I don't know how you guys, I feel uplifted. I don't know,
I'm like in tears every time.
These are so powerful. Stories are so powerful, y'all.
Yeah.
They really are. Yeah, so let's listen to Ruby Lynn.
Hi, my name is Ruby Lynn, and my husband Rex and I are live webcam models and content creators. And our coming out story is a little bit different maybe than some people's. We are a mature cam couple in our mid-50s, and we have 5 adult children. In late September of this year, we received a text message from our adult daughter. I might add, it was during a live webcam show one evening, stating that she needed to talk to us right away. And so we got off cam, and Rex had called her while I was straightening up and using the restroom. And when I walked out, what I heard was she was on speaker and said something about Pornhub. So my ears perked up, and I went immediately downstairs. And what the situation was is a childhood friend of one of our other adult children had seen an ad that our campsite had placed on Pornhub advertising us. And he screenshot it and sent it to our son. We already had some issues with our son and his wife, and so this just really compounded and added to it. And that son decided to, in turn, turn around and send that screenshot to all the other adult children. And luckily, our daughter was the only one that had the guts enough, I guess, to call us and confront us. So we came out to her and decided that right then and there that night we would call each of the other adult kids, but not the one who was sending out the screenshot, because we already have issues with them. So we came clean with everyone, and luckily the other 4 were extremely supportive, non-judgmental. We were just really excited about that, because we had hid our sex work life for about 18, 19 months. We kept it completely under wrap. The only people who had any idea were 2 of my best girlfriends. So a week later, I get another call from the same daughter, and apparently a cousin of hers had seen my TikTok, which, TikTok is, it's you can't get naked or do anything on TikTok, but it was one where I was talking about my feature article in Hustler magazine. So again, our poor daughter is in the middle, and apparently her cousin's father, Rex's brother, decided to spread it around the family and tell his elderly parents, who are not speaking to us at this point in time that we know of, because they haven't contacted us. So it's been quite a stressful time, but I have to say, in the end, we are so relieved we can be who we are now. There's no hiding it. Every single one of our friends know. Our entire family knows. And it's just been very liberating. So while we didn't get to share what we're doing with folks on our terms, in the end, people that thought they were going to share this information and have it be really detrimental, it kind of backfired on them, because the people that really care about us and that we want to surround ourselves have accepted it. So that's our coming out story. It was a little rocky there for a few weeks, but it's starting to settle down.
Actually, this is going back to what you were saying of like, we kind of filter out the people that aren't going to support us.
And I know Ruby and Rex. I met them at Wine Out Summit for the first time. They're on ePlay with me. And they're this couple in their 50s that are so fucking cool. She's like this 50-year-old woman obsessed with Machine Gun Kelly, being a groupie at concert. Like, they just live the coolest life. Like, they're
awesome. Their kids are really missing out. Or like, their judgmental son is really missing out. It sounds.
Yes. You have literally the coolest fucking parents, dude. Like,
Let's look a gift horse in the mouth, dude. Yeah. Wow. All right. Cool. That's cool. I want to jump in and say that, like, I'm really glad that we're getting both stories about coming out and also being outed. And like, I think that there's a really big difference here. And hands off to this extraordinary couple for their daughter and facing things head on together, as a community. And it sounds like this has been and will continue to be a really stressful time. I'm sure, like, the holidays coming up are going to be tense. And also I want to share and echo and uplift that feeling of relief of just like getting the secret out. It's a sort of a 12-step programmy thing to say, but like, we really are only as sick as our secret. And
that's very true. My mom actually taught me that lesson. This is a little, it's something, but I wrote a note to a boy at school when I was really young, and the teacher confiscated it and basically blackmailed me with it all year, that she was going to read in front of the class, and like tormented me. This kind of like, it was like this horrible, very, very traumatizing thing where like I was such a pleaser and a teacher's pet, and I skipped school. It was the whole thing. But my mom had given me the advice once she finally figured out why I was like a totally changed child, that you always have to tell your secrets on yourself. And that was the best advice I think I'd ever gotten, was to tell your secrets on yourself, because no one can hold power over you.
Yeah, I always joke, but it's not even a joke. It's for real, that like, I'm completely unblackmailable. Like, what is somebody going to say about me?
PJ made that very clear. He's like, you tell everyone on business. It's all over the internet. You write about everything.
I know. I'm like, what do you have on me? I've already published it in an article. So,
probably way more self-deprecating than your version would have been, frankly, because I have the internal monologue, right? Like, I know that my reasons were suspect. So like, heard. Yeah.
But I mean, I think, Sasha Ray brought this up too, that like, there's this feeling of like feeling totally free once you let that out.
Let it go. Yeah.
Let it go.
And I'm sorry. I just want to echo that of like, I think that's really true of sex workers, right? And the stigma and the shame and the secrecy around that. But I think that is also true for like women and queer people. And I feel like we're carrying around so much societal bullshit about our own stories that it really blocks the freedom that can come from owning our own choices. And like, I know so many women that have never engaged in erotic labor that are torn up from the inside around, the shame of being perceived, right, as slutty, or, sexual choices in the past, or this foundational belief that the sex that they engaged in, or even worse, the sex that was done to them, right, diminished their value in some way. Like, I feel like we can all benefit, right, as a society by telling our stories and owning our stories and letting like other people's shame be just that, like other people's.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Let's go on to Rena Storm. This story was contributed by Rainstorm. She sent it to me over email. My main worry over my career as a full-service sex worker up until recently was the reaction I might get. Who would I lose? Then one day my nightmare came true when a person I thought was a friend on Facebook sent me a message saying he was going to out me on my timeline as a disgusting sex worker, as he put it. And he had the names of people on my friend list so he could pass the information on to them individually. I was in tears. I risked losing everyone. So I felt I had no option but to beat him at his own game and out myself. I carefully posted on my timeline that I was a full-service sex worker, and I named the troll that was threatening to out me. I only lost a couple of people. To my surprise, everyone else stood by me. They even asked me if I use my own name at work or an alias, so I told them my sex work name was Rainstorm. A few even privately asked, no names mentioned, if they could go onto my SWr account, which was nice of them. This gave me courage to come out to my mom. God, I was so scared. She sat and listened as I explained I was a full-service sex worker, and during the pandemic, I did live vid strips and chats and did nude photos for clients who were under lockdown so they had some human contact, and that I was doing that free to keep morale going. She called me a dirty little devil, and when I explained that what I do makes people happy in a world that's very harsh and unhappy place at the moment, and then I'm proud of what I do and what I can bring to people, she eased up. For an 80-year-old, she was very open-minded, just as she was years ago when I came out to her as transgender.
Oh, wow.
Oh. Again, yeah, blessings to cool moms, and fuck all those fucking dudes, right? What what? We are awash in, I feel like, yeah, like, is it a pandemic of dumb dudes? Like, this oh, God.
There's a new epidemic.
Yeah. Oh, it's, yeah. I wish it was new, right? Like, we just invented dumb dudes, like, yesterday, right? Yeah. Wouldn't that be awesome? It's like, oh, yeah. Oh, man. Through it. I love stories about reclaiming the power and reclaiming the narrative, right? And, like, I hate it. I always hate it when people are forced into these positions, especially by, jealous ex-lovers or controlling dudes or judgmental friends or family members. Like, I think it's my heart always goes out to that high anxiety moment, and it feels like you're drowning in quicksand and the, catastrophic thinking. And I love hearing stories from the other side of that, right? Where people found their footing and found their community and found ways to come back to themselves. And so, I applaud this 80-year-old mom.
I know.
Yeah, I think, you nasty devil. Like, it's not a compliment, like, it's, I get it. It's, that's nice.
Yeah, definitely.
That's
okay.
great. Wait, I wanted to also say when, about the reclaiming your power. I think that we all kind of carry this idea that we have this major audience following us around at all times that really has either power in our narrative or a lot of damage that they can really wreak on our lives. And to some extent, of course, there's some people that really can. But for the most part, these audiences that we make believe are there watching our every move and are going to, really judge us. I think a lot of that is in our head as well. Like, it's out there in some capacity, but a lot of these stories share the theme that, like, I didn't lose that many people, or like it was better than I expected,
Yeah. And I don't want to diminish that, like, fear or anxiety of, like, there are absolutely people who, their families disown them or are met with violence. Like, I experienced that when I made the mistake of coming out to an ex-boyfriend and then, got, thrown up against a wall, right? But it's like, that's not, there was a long time there where I held on to this false narrative of, like, oh, if I'd never told him about the sex work, then the violence wouldn't have happened. And I think it's been a real revelation to me afterwards to be like, oh no, coming out about sex work saved my life, because the violence would have come later, right? And so I absolutely think that your earlier point of, like, you can choose to surround yourself with people that accept your whole self, right? Including the work that you do, and whatever your feelings about that are. And I do think it's important to say aloud that, like, yeah, we keep getting these stories, right? Of like, give the people in your life some grace and some
Yeah.
faith, because there are a lot of folk who can really hold these truths,
Yeah.
in addition to the love and the respect that they have for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really love that. I do think that I do wonder if we shouldn't like also say though that like a lot of these stories have been very uplifting. There are a lot of people for whom like the relationships can't go back
Yeah,
to
they'll
like
never repair.
will never be repaired.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to give space to that too, because that also happens, and it happens a lot. And I think it's easy for us from like the positions that we're in now, because we're all fairly stable, we're in stable
Yeah.
relationships, like the three of us, I mean, like but to be like, oh, well, you just, slough off the ones who don't support you,
No,
and
it's
other
not that
ones will
easy.
come, and
Yeah.
Vision board your way into.
Just
Right,
visualize.
yeah. I hear
Visualize.
you. Yeah.
and,
So,
and
yeah.
it's not that easy, because like I say that now as somebody who's like done some repair on some of the relationships that fell apart
Yeah.
when I was outed or when I came out. And but it's been years, and it was not easy. And some things are always going to be weird in some of the relationships that I have. And weird is good. Like, I wasn't beaten, I mean, weird isn't good, but like my story is relatively mild compared to like the stories of other people. And I feel like it's not always safe. And I think we need to like
Yeah, well,
acknowledge that too.
it wouldn't be ahead of a December 17th, remembrance if that was how all the stories went. So it's good to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at Margot's story.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to the World's Oldest Profession podcast and all of its listeners. My name is Margot Underwood, and I'm a full-service sex worker. I am incredibly grateful to be a part of this coming out as a sex worker project, and just as equally privileged to even have an uplifting story to share with everyone. So I wrote a little piece that I'll be reading from, and I hope you enjoy. The submission said to share our uplifting stories about coming out as a sex worker, and the story I'm about to share with you all might leave you inspired, but for me it didn't start that way. Dare I say that coming out as a sex worker was liberating and soon to be one of the best years of my life. Yet this same experience was inextricably linked with sorrow, core shame, disgust, and downright confusion. Insert cheesy quote by Theodore Roosevelt. Nothing in the world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, difficulty. I've never in my life envied a human being who led an easy life. I've envied a great many people who led difficult lives and led them well. I can say with the most confidence that I've never chosen the easy path in any aspect of my life. My childhood was riddled with decisions that simply made mine and my parents' lives more difficult. Fast forward into adulthood, 18 according to the judicial system of the United States. I rejected the opportunities that would have made my life a cakewalk by some people's definition, and latched on to the decisions that challenged me beyond anything I could have imagined. From the outside looking in, some thought that the life that I chose was the easy way out, when in fact it was just more exciting, unpredictable in my eyes. It was only at the start of COVID-19 that I had the fabulous idea of coming out to my family, friends, and eventually the public as a sex worker. The decision did not derive out of a coming to self moment. No, that comes way later in the story. This decision manifested out of pure fear. Fear that became so crippling, the only way to free myself was to walk through the fire, burn, and shed who I once was to the people who expect the most out of me. It was a normal day. I jumped on Instagram, and one of my favorite educators at the time was having a live Q&A. I can't remember the exact purpose of their Q&A, but I had the opportunity to ask them a question about their approach to coming out as a sex worker, specifically to their family. The response I received was life-changing. It's not about if they'll find out, it's about when they'll find out. And being prepared to have that conversation is one of the best things you can do for yourself. I might have butchered that quote a little bit, but that's the essence. It may not be applicable to everyone, but I took those words and I ran. I ran with new eyes that gave me a sense of hope because in my head they were right. It's not about if, it's about when. So how do I best prepare myself for this conversation? Because I want to have it today. I was ripe to the point that if I stayed in the closet any longer, I would have rotted away. So I began the process of preparation. For anyone who knows what it feels like to hide who you are from the ones who are supposed to know you better than anyone else, it sucks. The best way to describe it is waking up feeling sick to the stomach and carrying that feeling around with you 100% of the time. It really can make you physically ill and has negative effects on the nervous system, digestion, hormonal production, and so on. I started with my stepsister, moving on to my stepmom, who then told my dad, without my consent, might I add. And by the time I saw my dad, it was a swift, you need to move out in 3 days. Granted, I shouldn't have been living with him in the first place, but there's a whole other backstory to that one that involves school, COVID, and uprooting my life to move across the country. I was fully prepared for this response and found it to be quite appropriate on their part. The stars aligned and I found a new place to live within 24 hours. Once I was settled into my new place, I took it upon myself to tell my mother over the phone, because she lives very far away, who was definitely not enthusiastic about this lifestyle choice, might have even cried, thrown some Jesus quotes my way, but at the end of the day, she just wanted what was best for me. When I didn't stop receiving phone calls from my aunt, father's sister, I went ahead and told her as well. Each conversation entailed details about how I run my business, from safety protocols to obtaining cash to how I do my taxes. But each family member was too stumped on the word prostitute that the words just couldn't absorb at the time. There was a decision made by my father's family to make it clear that I was not welcomed at any family events from there on out, mostly out of an irrational fear that I would tell all the grandbabies about my deviancy. Even though the response was anything but love and acceptance, I'm not mad at my family. Sure, at the time it really hurt, but I really couldn't expect too much. I walked away from that experience with a very important life lesson. You cannot expect people to accept you as you are, even your family. Because at the end of the day, the only acceptance that has weight in your life is the kind that you give to yourself. What a beautiful and empowering message I walked away with. Again, not something that came to me immediately, but all in good time. Shortly thereafter, I no longer needed to hide who I was or what I was interested in studying. I remember asking myself what I wanted to do with my studies since I was no longer living up to the expectations of the world around me. I sat there, thought about how I spend my free time, what I search the most on Google, the conversations that I have with my peers, and I came to the beautiful conclusion of psychology and sexuality. I am now the proud owner of podcast The Psych Ho. In addition to being a student in a bachelor's for ABA psychology and a program through Sexual Health Alliance to become a certified sexuality and intimacy consultant. Additionally, I co-lead a group for my national and international kink community called Peers Improving After Toxicity Together, or The PIT, which you can find on FetLife or Facebook. We're a support group that offers weekly Zoom calls to cover central discussion topics in relation to manipulation tactics of abusers, as well as facilitate a space for anyone to share their experiences, good or bad, surrounding abuse within BDSM or kink-centric relationship styles. All of these things would have never been possible for me had I not taken that initial leap of acceptance for who I am and what I stand for. Sex work has not only allowed me to operate from a flexible schedule and participate in 2 educational programs at once, but more importantly, sex work challenges me to focus on intentional forms of self-care and tune into my body's needs to maintain a healthy mentality. In addition, sex work has empowered me to speak up for what feels good within and without the bedroom walls. I'm lucky enough to have a handful of pleasers who want to see me enjoying myself before they get to their pleasure. Sure, this can sometimes be rooted in selfish and egotistical motives, but nonetheless, I exploit this opportunity to use my words and express what does and doesn't feel good. Moreover, sex work has expanded my understanding of the vetting process, emphasized how important an STI panel and sexual health are, and finally, that self-worth is not rooted in how much I charge for my time, but that it's rooted in the love that I show to myself. I am privileged to have the choice to be out and face forward as a sex worker, to have the ability to implement vetting procedures and deposits, to say no to problematic clients. And I hope that one day my career leads me into a position where I can aid sex workers in need who cannot necessarily do all of the above. I am grateful for the opportunity to share my short story with the public on such a compassionate platform, and only hope that I can reach one person whom it provides comfort for. Thank you for your time, and just want to set the record straight that my family and I are back on good terms. I do attend family events now, and I just avoid talking about my life and career unless specifically asked. So once again, thank you, and I hope that you enjoyed.
There's so many beautiful quotes that hit so deep from her story. So many. And it wasn't it was more real, like not more real, but it highlighted the struggle of a lot of.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there was so much in there that was really great. I think I appreciated the journey because, you know, a lot of these stories, the people were, which I really love and appreciate, the family members accepted them right away. That wasn't my story. That's like how where I'm getting to. But I think that I love that though, because it also shows that like that there are a lot of people for whom they do get there. That, you know, if you come out and there's an initial like freak out moment, or they throw the Bible at you, or, you know, tell you to kick you out, like there's a lot of times people come around. There's something shocking, I think, about sex work. And people heal and people change, and we can also tell that story.
And I think
I like that the only acceptance you really need is yourself. I'm like, that's a strong message that it's hard to remember sometimes in sex work.
Yeah, that's something I really, really appreciated about this story, is that, like, you know, she went into this, she went into those conversations with a really strong sense of her own choice, right? You know, like, you know, it's not a matter of if, it's when, and I've decided that that's happening today, knowing full well that that would result in, you know, losing her housing, losing, you know, connection with her family for an unknown period of time, and still, you know, like drilling into her truth and her sense of self and being able to hold on to that through this process. And, you know, even now it sounds like, you know, they're at a compromise that I absolutely recognize. You know, I very rarely talk about my work with my family. Either either my parents or my in-laws. You know, there's just sort of this big hole in between, you know, we navigate around, you know, and but which is different, I think, from it being a secret, right? Like I'm out and fully accept myself, and also it's not the topic of conversation, and in part because, you know, I have these outlets, right? You know, this podcast, this great community talking. I spend a lot of time talking about sex work and sex workers and sex work community, and so it really, really sounds like this author, who's an excellent writer, by the way, really went into these conversations with a strong foundation and was able to ride through the storm, right? And hold on, while other people felt their feelings. And I just really want to applaud, this writer for going into that with such intention and being able to arrive on the other side of that big reveal.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's look at.
Oh, I love this one.
Hi, I'm Charla Hathaway. And at age 54, I elected SexWork. That's right, I became a whore at 54. I didn't want to teach violin anymore. I didn't want to teach high school. I got newly divorced, moved to a new big city. And I realized all the books I was reading were about sex. I was interested in sex. So I answered the ad in the weekly paper to become an escort. And it made all the difference in my life. Before, sex was kind of like doing things for other people and serving them. But now, men were coming to my door, and I was the teacher. It was about me. And I delivered. I showed them how to slow up, how to be present, how to feel their body, breathe, learn to receive. And it empowered me in my own sexuality. It was the best thing that happened in my life. And still now, 20 years later, after writing a couple books, getting a PhD, and making a couple movies, which you've got to see on SexWork. It's on my website, charlahathaway.com. And they won awards here in Portland. I realized that electing SexWork was one of the most empowering tools that I found in my life.
I love her.
I love her too. There's first of all, I became a whore at 54 is just I want that on t-shirts. I want to build, there's so much happening there, and I love you. Like a 20-year career in sex work is nothing to sneeze at, no matter when you get into it.
Yeah. Right.
But getting into it later in life and being able to sustain and branch out and do different kinds of media, it's like just all around round of applause. And it sounds like she's just living her best life and gives absolutely no fucks. I didn't hear a coming out story here, but I also didn't hear that she gives any fucks what anyone else thinks about her amazing life and career choices.
Right. Yeah. So she doesn't need to come out. What does she care?
Yeah. She sounds like she has a movie, so maybe that's her coming out.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all public people, public women.
Yeah.
So I'm a former chef. I am classically trained in pastry. I have 2 college degrees, one in business and one in culinary arts. I cooked from the time I was 16 to the time I was 26. That's when I found camming. And I started out as a cam model. I moved to clip making full-time. I still make clips full-time, but I also take night flirt calls, and I've been on Reddit full-time for almost 4 years. I have been doing this almost 10 years. I have always loved my job, and I wouldn't do anything else. I never thought this would be something I did long term. I didn't think I would be successful, but when I started out successful, I knew that I was going to stay successful because losing is not a word in my vocabulary. I quit my pastry job 3 months in from doing this, and that's when I decided to tell my brother. My brother was the first person I came out to. The reason I came out to him first was because, 1, we were always very, very close. He was my best friend. And 2, he was serving in the military. He was in Afghanistan, and I was really afraid that he was going to find me on the internet and be upset that I just didn't tell him. So I told him, and he thought it was awesome. He thought that I deserved it. I worked really hard to not be poor, and being a pastry chef didn't allow me the opportunity to make a lot of money. I'm a single parent. I got pregnant at a very young age, and I grew up poor. And I knew I didn't want the same thing for my child. I have done everything in my power to make that a reality. After telling my brother, about a year in, I told my mom's sister, my aunt. My mom has 2 sisters, and my aunt was pretty unconventional herself and kind of beat to her own drum. And I was really comfortable with telling her what I did. So I told her what I did, and she was really cool with it. My finances significantly changed. I made maybe $20,000 as a pastry chef. I mean, my first year camming, I tripled that. So after a couple of years, people started noticing. My mom, my biological mom, 3 years in, we were driving. I literally remember this like it was yesterday. And she looked over and she asked me if I was escorting. And at first I didn't even know what to say because I wasn't escorting. I was online only, and I was literally just taking night floor calls and camming. So that's what I told her. I told her that I took night floor calls. She asked me what that was. I told her men called me and I humiliated them. She thought that that was awesome, and we moved on. I came out to my other aunt shortly after, who is pretty conservative. She wasn't 100% accepting, but did not make me feel like I was an outcast or anything like that. My sister pretty much immediately disowned me when she found out. She's always been very judgmental, and I kind of knew she was going to, not be okay with it. Then my cousins found out. I had 3 girl cousins and 1 boy cousin, and everybody in the beginning they were really great. Everything was fine. Up until about 5 years ago. 5 years ago, my girl cousin got really drunk, and she texted me really nasty, hateful things about this job, about how she didn't respect me, how I was a disgrace to the family. You name it, she said it to me. And I was really upset. I broke down. I'm not an emotional person. And I remember crying a lot because I never felt so upset, because I was still the same person that they knew. I was the same girl that they didn't know for 3 years. So I just, and this had been well into my career. I had been doing this for like 6 years by this point. I had to cut off contact with my biological family after this because of what happened. Nobody really backed me up. Nobody supported me. It's been almost 5 years since I've talked to them. That's when I told my daughter, because I was very visually upset. She was 11 at the time. She knew something was wrong. So I told her that I wasn't a pastry chef, that I did adult work. I didn't get too specific as she was 11. And she was awesome about it. As she's gotten older, I've disclosed my job a little bit further. She is insanely proud of me. I've bought a condo. I've been able to take us to do things. I've been able to provide her with literally the best life possible, because financially I can. And this was my whole goal going in, was to make sure that she didn't struggle, that she didn't grow up poor like I did. I've been on my own since I was 14. And I did not want, not that I would have ever left my child, but I didn't want the same struggle for her. My daughter has been my biggest supporter. She's actually currently writing a novel about my life, about my job, about how society stigmatizes us as sex workers, and I could not be more proud of her. I don't regret coming out. I am actually happy it all happened because it shows me people's true colors. Because if somebody got to know me and I didn't tell them what I did, they wouldn't judge me. But the second I tell them I'm a sex worker, sometimes it changes. The thing is I'm not just a sex worker. I'm a certified, trained Reiki practitioner. I'm a part-time astrologer. I play the stock market. I run 2 Etsy stores. So I'm not just a sex worker, and a lot of people fail to see this. So coming out has been a blessing. I don't hesitate to tell people what I do. I don't even care anymore because if my whole family is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. There's literally nothing else that could destroy me. And I'm happy I found out their true feelings. I'm happy that I, got to see it because I am not a fake person. I'm an honest, blunt person. If I had to do it all again, I would come out in a heartbeat again, and I would do it all over again. Being a sex worker, doing this job, has been the best thing that has ever happened to me and to my child. And I just wish people would understand that.
Wow. It's so striking to me, the more I get to know about sex workers and their personal lives before they entered into sex work, the more I realize that the vast majority of sex workers get into it because of poverty,
Yeah.
out of poverty, and that's not sexy marketing.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's not something that we put forward, but I think that there's I think it's worth saying that this, like the military for men, I think sex work is a path for women and for other people who are marginalized to be able to make money on their own. And I really appreciate the way that she wove that into the story.
Absolutely. I think that you're right. It's not sexy marketing, whenever it comes to talking about money, people get so uncomfortable because it's like not okay to say you don't want to be poor like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I get what comes along with that, and that's a complicated conversation as well. But there's nothing wrong with wanting to use this as a vehicle or use this to do something else or just do this for the sake of doing this. Like that, I think it needs to be said that that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in poverty. There's nothing like ennobling about it. It's
right.
really difficult.
Yeah.
And it's, I think you're right. I think it's okay to say that. And the other thing that I think was really powerful that she said a lot of powerful things, but the idea that like that knowing like who your family is gives you like a freedom too. I remember when we were first outed and we were at like a family reunion, I would walk into a room and people would get up and walk out, and make it very clear that they were like disgusted by me, and they did it in front of my kids, which was very hurtful to me. And they could feel that, and I so yeah, I mean, I appreciate those, like being open about what that's like, but then how you can also like, the thing that's great about that is you also build family. Like she's built something different with her family, with her daughter, and we can create our own stories.
Yes.
Yeah. There were a couple of things that really, really jumped out. And, like I feel like what she's modeling for her daughter is so powerful, that acceptance and like what a loss on the part of her family, right? This incredible person, and her incredible daughter, and like they don't get to spend time with them, right? They don't get to see this incredible person grow up. They don't get to see, this wonderful person mother her daughter and build her life and build something better than what she came up in, all because of their own prejudice, their own shit, is keeping them from a relationship with, an incredible, brilliant, driven person that's doing right by her and her family. And
Yeah.
and I just want to say, like I really heard her, and I don't know if we're going to include the numbers or whatever, but I've known a lot of chefs in my life, a lot of people that work food and bev, and it's not a lifestyle that's really conducive to being there for your
Yeah.
child, right?
Yeah,
Like, not only is she
absolutely.
not making a lot of money, right? Like, you want to talk about exploitation, right? You want to talk about jobs that break down your body. You want to talk about sexual harassment at the workplace.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about what it means to work in a kitchen. And so I really applaud this woman for, taking stock of her life, making choices and getting herself to a place where she can really be proud of herself and her choices, even in the face of her family's shame. I
Disapproval.
think that's
Yeah.
really powerful.
The last story is, we will move to that one now.
Great.
Hey, my name is Isla Cox, and if you aren't familiar with who I am, I'm an award-nominated model and podcaster. I've been in the industry for 3 years, and I have the most crazy story about coming out to my family. The story begins with my mom. I started by telling her. When I first told her, after the initial shock wore off, and I want to say it lasted for a couple seconds, she said that she was very excited for me, and she was super happy that I found something that I really enjoyed and could also make money while doing. I felt like a huge weight was lifted, but there were still more people that I needed to tell. So I started telling more of my family members. Each person took it so well. They all responded enthusiastically and were so happy that I found something I was really passionate about. But there was something going on in the background that I was not aware that was happening. Some of my family members went behind my back and they made a pact, a secret actually, and they were going to turn me into a good Christian girl and bring me back to God so that I would leave sex work behind. Now, I had no idea that this was going on. So my family members that made this pact together started guilt-tripping me and shaming me and using all these different covert tactics to try to make me feel as if I was the one making the decision to leave sex work. Since I'm familiar with these tactics, I already knew what they were trying to do, and I pushed back. I established myself that I'm an adult, I don't need their approval, and that I can do whatever I feel is best for myself. I quickly explained that sex work allows for me to be my true self, and I truly enjoy doing it, and that if they cannot accept my true self the way that I can, I do not want them to be a part of my life. And that is a story about how I told my family members that I'm a sex worker. It led to me cutting a few family members out of my life, and there's still a few that I interact with. Ultimately, I learned that you need to do what you feel is best for yourself. I'm passionate about sex work. I absolutely love being an adult model, and I'm not going to stop for anyone else.
She's so
Good for her.
She's so happy.
Yeah, good for her. Yeah, what an upbeat way of talking about being gaslit by your family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's, there's a lot to unpack there. Yeah. I hear that too. My husband was raised in an evangelical home and talks about his own experience with this kind of thinking of like when he came out to his parents as an atheist, right, as not believing in God. There were years and years and years of, his family, like, cornering him or like trying to, like bring him back into the church using a variety of different tactics, all of which ended up ultimately undermining their relationship and eroding trust. And so, it sounds like this is another example of that. And it's, I'm really sad for this, badass performer's family that, they've robbed themselves of an opportunity to get closer to her, because again, they let their own shame, stigma, and prejudice get in the way of a powerful connection with someone they love.
Yeah,
But
not only did
their loss.
Absolutely. But not only did they like rid themselves of sunshine embodied in human form.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Fair and accurate description, actually. Yeah, I get that. That's the one
you vote off the island? What?
Right.
Okay.
What?
All right. But I also want to speak to what you mentioned about this, like bringing back, because me and my husband, given a lot of people where we live, because it's small town Bible Belt, don't know about me and my sex work. And also, there's acres between us. So it's not like we're like hanging out all the time. But there's like this constant, like, come to church, trying to get us into the church. And my husband was just like, do you guys get frequent flyer points? Like, do you get a point every time?
Is there a punch card system? What's happening here? Right? Like, how many souls to a free donut? Is there something?
Exactly. So I think that's so interesting, because I think that's probably a very, very shared experience of like this kind of, don't worry, we can convince them, or they'll, once they see the light, or once, whatever.
Yeah, I get it. I did that with alcoholics for years, but it's not, sorry, that's not, you can fix them. Much empathy, but like, you're right. Wow. I love like this, Isla sounds very much like there is absolutely nothing that could take the joy out of Isla's life. Like that's, and I think that's great, and if there's a God, there's no way that God doesn't appreciate that energy, like exactly. She's obviously a gift.
No, I mean, we need to like wrap this up now, but it's been like from my perspective of having like being outed, having family members, having that turn some of my relationships really sour. But then like seeing what that can look like, seeing family members who have been really supportive, and seeing people come through really difficult situations to realize they're to stand on their feet. It's really inspiring to me.
And hopefully a lot of people listening, if they are in the thick of it, where it all looks hopeless right now, they're going to hear some of these stories and be like, you know what, maybe with time, they're going to come back into my life, or
I'm going to build I'm
going to have a whole new family. Yeah.
Because however this goes, it can be okay. I want to jump in and make an observation, just as a historically minded person, that, a lot of the submissions that we got are about the situations that COVID sort of forced us into. People that were doing full service sex work, transitioning to the internet, exposure to friends and family. So, you hear a lot of people talk about, different levels of safety, right? And the risk of full service versus sort of the risk of having stuff online. And so I know that there are a lot of sex workers out there right now who are navigating a different level of exposure. And so I hope for anyone listening that they're able to find something from this episode to take away with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to just go around and tell each other's audiences where to find the other podcasts?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. We'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I'm MelRose Michaels, and I'm hosting On The Horizon with Jessie Sage. And you can find more information as well as more on the Horizon podcast at SexWorkCEO.com.
Great. And I'm Jessie Sage from On The Horizon, and also Peepshow Podcast. That's at peepshowpodcast.com, and on Twitter at Peepshow Mag. And I'm also Jessie Sage on Twitter at sapiotextual.
I'm Caitlin Bailey. I'm the host of the Oldest Profession podcast and the founder and executive director of Old Pros. We send out a newsletter every Friday. That's a roundup of sex worker rights related news from around the country. So please get on our newsletter. We have live shows coming up in 2022, and new episodes of the Oldest Profession podcast are also dropping in January. So
awesome. And also, we should just say it to you, because this episode will air on The Horizon before the holiday season. So if you're going home to see family, we wish you a very Merry Christmas, and we will see you after the holiday.
Happy holidays.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of On The Horizon, a podcast about what's on the horizon for sex workers and how to navigate it.
I'm Jessie Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual and at jessiesage.com.
And I'm MelRose Michaels, and you can find me on social at MelRose Michaels and melrosemichaels.com.
Remember, if you want bonus footage from today's episode, you can always subscribe to us on Anchor for $9.99 a month to access all the footage we couldn't include on today's show.